Welcome to the Market Mystics Podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in. Here we are. Welcome back.
Welcome back. I feel like some of the things on my mind right now are better suited for a weird conversation. So I'm gonna when we're done recording, I'll take some notes because I feel like the next conversation, they could could be there. But what I wanted to talk about today is the past 2 weekends, which I know this is going to come out a week from when we're recording, but the past 2 weekends, Bree and I have gone to 2 different events. We went to a Passover Seder, and then this weekend we went to I don't want to say it exactly how they say it because I know I'm going to get it wrong. And but we went to an Easter service at a Christian Orthodox Church. And both of them were different, had things that were very unique to them. Both of them were much longer than a normal service that I'm used to. But it was just it was a really interesting experience to attend these feasts in a more ancient feeling or a more ancient environment. And I think it's really I don't know. First of all, have you ever been to a Christian Orthodox church, like an Eastern Orthodox church?
Except to pick up a plate of food.
Yeah. It was maybe the most beautiful building I've been inside.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to hear about it.
Especially their they call it the nave, which is what we would probably call a sanctuary.
Like a KNAVE?
I don't actually know. I assumed it was NAVE, but I don't know that answer.
You talk about it, I'll Google it.
Okay. I really don't want to be disrespectful to the Orthodox people. I know almost nothing about their terminology.
NAVE.
Okay, nice. It was so beautiful. The whole room was covered in art of the saints and of biblical people and Jesus, and the entire room was like that. And they have a they call them icons, and they hold them in high esteem. And they were talking about how, not actually at that service, but I was talking to a friend about it. And he said, we believe that by putting that person on the wall and holding it in high honor, that because heaven is outside of time, that when we meet to worship, they are there with us worshiping as well. And I was like, that's so similar to the mystical things that where I've gone and people are like, oh, the saints are here with us. I'm like, yeah, they knew that as well. And the saints were such an important part of the service that they were like, we're just going to put them on the wall. We want to visually see it and represent it. And they actually called it they called their icons like a sermon for the eyes. So while you're participating in the service, you are experientially getting all these stories and things visually put into you. And it was I don't know, it was just a really interesting thing because it took this mystical, almost ethereal thing that I have experienced and have been around and honored, and made it like really tangible.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like um, a really beautiful aspect of it. Also, their churches are built with domes, and there's usually one central dome over the nave, and and Jesus is always in that dome. And
What does that represent?
um, well, I don't know exactly what it represents, but one of the things that I read said that um, they believe that the worship and prayers rise up during the service to Jesus, who is in that highest point. Um, and then because it's a dome, it like hits that and trickles back down the sides. And then the glory of Jesus like trickles back down onto the people inside the nave.
That's
And I was
interesting.
like, that's a really cool thing.
I Googled it, and those are all things that it says. But it also says the circular shape of the dome can also represent eternity, and its position at the highest point of the building
Mm,
emphasizes its connection to the divine.
that's really cool. Yeah. So, anyways, it was just like it was a really interesting service to be able to walk into a place that I was unfamiliar with.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually more familiar with the like elements of the Passover Seder that I went to. Like, I think I've spent more time exploring different Jewish root things. Um, but to walk into this Orthodox church and like see how the service was structured and the building was structured, and like from the very moment you go in, it is um I mean, I think ritual is probably a fine word to describe it. Like you are going in to experience you're going in to experience
Yeah.
church. Like that's what it is. It's bringing all of your senses into an experience, into an event. Um, and they worship with their bodies. They stand, they sit, they kneel, they lie prostrate, and we didn't do it because it was raining, but they almost always process around the church, especially on the Easter service. And it's just like the person who I went with was explaining that it was like um, you are you go out through an archway, which is like entering the grave, and then you come back in through a different archway, and which is like death and resurrection. Like you're taking your body through a journey of death and resurrection.
Interesting.
um and it was like, yeah, it was very interesting. I think something that felt similar between the Seder and this service was um both in sects of Judaism and in Orthodoxy, like the body is very involved. Like where you stand, how you sit, what you do with your body is very involved. And my experience in charismatic churches, like maybe you raise your hands during worship or you close your eyes, but like there's not a lot of meaning outside of like adoration or worship from what you do with your
Hmm.
body. um
We should have a Pentecostal on.
we
They might
should.
have something else to say about that,
They
because
might.
I feel like they get down.
Some That's true. That's true. They very much so very active.
Yes,
I'm just speaking from my experience in
sure.
church. Um, but it was like, I don't know, it was a really fun thing to experience both of them in back-to-back weekends because there were some similarities, there was a lot of differences, but both of them were things that are outside of my normal way of church. And
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I think it was really interesting. I think at the like the thing that I've been the most intrigued by recently has been the Orthodox piece of it because it was brand new. Like I didn't know anything about it. the
Yeah.
Jewish part. Like I was a little bit more familiar with some of that. Um, and I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but like the priest at the Orthodox Church can trace his lineage back to like Paul, I think is what they said. Um,
Did Paul have children?
I don't know. That's why I'm not sure if Paul's the right name.
Okay.
um, but it's like someone
Okay. Okay.
ancient. Um, but it was like it's just a very interesting like uh, I mean, obviously it's called the Orthodox Church because it's the first Christian church.
Mhm.
But like their history is just so uh, deep, and
Rich.
not that it's perfect by any means, but like it's a very rich history. Um, and I was listening to a YouTube like guy today talk about it because I was trying to understand the difference between what I believe and what they believe and like what like I don't actually really fully understand what that is. Um, but he made a really interesting comment on charismatic mega churches. And he said a lot of charismatic mega churches cannot survive the passing of the founding pastor
Mhm.
because it's built around him and his teachings and his beliefs rather than something bigger than that. And he gave several examples of that, of like very large things. And I was like, that's interesting because I've seen that. Like I've seen it
I
happen.
I've seen it too. I would love we should take that into a let's get weird one.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple aspects
Uh-huh.
of it that I'm like, for Thursday.
That's super interesting because you talked about like with the Orthodox Church it being like this full experience like
Mhm.
for all the parts of you.
Yeah.
And it made me triggered a little bit. It made me think about a very attractional church that I used to go to, and they called their Sunday service a worship experience,
Mhm.
which sounds really great. But some of the things that then I noticed about it was kind of trying to recreate the glory of the Lord, um, or present a heavenly experience, but without really anything to back it up,
Mhm.
which sounds like a huge dig on the church, and it's not meant to be. But being part of that system, I was working at that church, um, and participating in it and having very real experiences. Then during that time and after, um, like in the throne room and like approaching the throne where the creator sits, like, and worshiping with angels, and then to see kind of the two and how different they are. The one felt like it was, uh, I mean, it was just smoke and lights, you
Yeah.
know? And it's not that I don't think that you can't experience the real thing there. I think you
Yeah.
can. But I think there's something really significant about like stewarding that environment so that it is not just the surface things, hoping that someone will dive in deeper,
Mhm.
but having the people who are leading knowing how to dive in deeper and open the experience for everyone who's there. Like I think
Yeah.
it's so different, but it kind of like it triggered me into thinking about that
Yeah.
because it was a very real thing. And on the grand exodus kind of out of the church, it wasn't that grand. I mean, it was just like I didn't go back, right? But it felt grand in my life.
Yeah.
In that process of unwinding from some of that, those were some of the things that we had to like muddle through and evaluate and really kind of, I don't know about repent from. I don't think it was wrong, but it was just not quite there.
Yeah. Mm.
So in saying that, how, and maybe you don't want to talk about this publicly, how did you feel at the Orthodox Church? Like, did it feel like they were really stewarding that and leading you into a meaningful experience? Or was it also just something on the surface, hoping somebody would dive in deep?
Mm. I think that's interesting.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I think what makes, and I'm gonna give Bree credit for this because she told me this the other day. Um, what makes a work a dead work or not a dead work is if it leads you closer into relationship, or if you're just doing it out of like ritual or habit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, do I think that the very ritualistic nature of the Orthodox Church, um, was there people there who were just going through the motions because you go to service on Easter Sunday? I mean, it was packed. It was standing room only. There was people surrounding the edges of the building because they couldn't get into a seat. Um, like, do I think that some of those people were just participating in the ritual because it's what they're supposed to do? Yes. Um, but also the the person I went with has been a part of that church for about 2 years, a little over 2 years. And they introduced us to some friends who are like just have only been there a couple months. Um, and in talking with both of them, the ritual very much so was bringing them closer into relationship with heaven. And so, like, I understand what you're saying about like some charismatic churches trying to almost manufacture the glory. Um, and I don't want to say that the Orthodox Church does the same thing, because I don't think they would ever view it that way.
Sure.
Um, but they have a very set process of this is what we do, this is what we say, this is where we stand. Um, and but they view their service, not that churches don't, um, but they view their service as a ascension into heaven, culminating in the highest honor that a Christian can partake in, which is the communion of the risen Savior.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, they actually do their services backwards from what a lot of um, like from what a lot of like churches I'm used to will do. So when you first walk in, it's a time of like very quiet, somber prayer. Um, then the church service like slowly starts to build, slowly starts to build, slowly starts to build, and ends in the culmination of like being in heaven with Jesus, doing communion with him. Um, and then after that, it ends with a celebration where they have coffee and fellowship and the community aspect of it. But a lot of the churches that I have gone to have kind of done that in a little bit of reverse order, where you celebrate first, have um, energetic music and like the height of it, and then end in a quiet, more somber, prayerful thing. And I just thought um, the comparing and contrasting the two of them, it was just a really interesting um, way to look at the service and look at the way they did. So to answer your original question, I think like, is it, were they just doing it? Like, I think it has a lot to do with the person, because the people I were with absolutely were not experiencing it that way.
Sure.
But were there people there that were? maybe, like probably. Um, in one of the videos I listened to today, the guy said, if you are going to an Orthodox church because you're trying to get closest to the ancient church and you've been hurt in your Protestant church, then Orthodoxy is probably not for you, because he's like, we're a church full of real people. Um, and he's like, if you were just upset because something happened in your old church, like it's probably going to happen in this church too. Like there's like, that's just because it's a church full of people. It's not like, it's not a church full of perfected beings.
Sure.
Um, and I thought that was really valuable because there is a there's a huge push back into uh, faith-based religions at the moment. Like this particular Orthodox church said that their number of new members is like doubled or tripled what it normally is. Um, I've heard that from many Catholic churches. A lot of Christian churches are experiencing rapid growth. Um, and I think a little bit of that is, I think the world feels very unstable to a lot of people. And I think they're looking for something that feels like it has security, or meaning. Like, I think really it's a search for meaning. Um, and so it's, I'm interested to see what it'll be like in a few years, because I think the makeup of the world is very quickly changing. Um, and I don't know exactly what that will look like, but it does feel like things are shifting. And like, I'm very surprised that people my age are flocking to an Orthodox church where their Easter service starts at 11 p.m. and is 2.5 hours long. The church was full of families and little kids. And like, that's not what I expected when I went there. I actually don't know what I expected, but it was not to experience a church full of young families with kids fully participating in a midnight service. Like, that's was a very surprising thing. Um, but I think it's a beautiful thing. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
So based on this experience, do you think you'll go back?
I would like to go back and experience like what a normal Sunday is, because this what we experienced was not a normal service.
Sure.
Um, it's the height of Christianity. Like Easter's probably, I mean, you could argue Easter or Christmas, but I think Easter, at least theologically, far is the highest feast. Um, and so I would like to experience like what a normal Sunday is like. Um, I think that would be interesting to see. So I do think we'll probably go back, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we'll go back regularly or if we'll just try it once and say, okay, that's cool. Like, I don't know that answer yet, but I do think we'll probably go back and at least experience what a normal service is.
I think that's awesome. I also I have to commend you, and I've always thought this about you. You have this like boldness to go step into something new,
Mm,
especially in religion or in the church aspect,
yeah.
that I just don't possess that boldness for. Like, I'm like, I would love to experience that, except that I don't know that I would ever feel comfortable going. It's
Well,
kind of like
I didn't feel comfortable for
you
sure.
didn't, but you did it.
Yeah,
I mean, you came to our church, how we met. You
that's true.
showed up by yourself to a
Yeah,
conference.
yeah, that was really uncomfortable as
Oh,
well.
look, I just gave a thumbs up.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, but I feel like I don't have the boldness for that. I have a
Mm,
friend who, well, I have lots of friends who are Catholic. I have a friend that I'm thinking of specifically who is Catholic, who um was talking about she signs up to do an hour of adoration. I think
mhm.
we've talked about this before. And I want to go with her so bad. But I'm also like really concerned that they're going to come and be like, you're not Catholic and kick
I,
me out. And I don't
I
want to be
was,
kicked
I
out. Like,
was.
I really want to go and just like sit and soak and experience.
Yeah,
But I also don't want to get kicked out, and I don't want to dishonor anything
yeah,
that they're doing, because that's not what it would be about. It would just be to experience kind of another setting,
yes.
another posture, whatever. So I have to commend you for going to the Orthodox Church, because I have also wanted to do that. I just don't want to go in and mess up.
Yeah. I
Like,
did have someone that I knew who went there, and I sent them a message before, and I was like, "Hey, I'd really like to come to a service. Can you please tell me can you give me some wear this, don't wear this, don't do this. Like, can you give me some tips?" Because, and I told him, I was like, my intent is I want to experience something I haven't experienced, but I also want to honor the people that are there. And I
yeah,
don't want to show up and be like, what are they doing? And take away from their experience.
yes,
Um,
I would feel the same way. Yeah,
yeah. So I was grateful that I had that person who
you had a guide.
who could give me some pointers. And really, what he said was are there some guidelines? Absolutely. But also come as you can come and do what you can do. He's like, the first time I went there, he's like, I just walked in carrying my water bottle and my Bible and normal charismatic church. And he's like, you're really not supposed to have any liquid, food or drink in the sanctuary. He's like, I didn't know. He's like, no one said anything. It's not like they're going to come. He's like, were there people who had thoughts? Probably. Um, but also it's pretty obvious when you're a new person in a Catholic church or an Orthodox church, you stand out.
Right.
um, and so, I think they know that, and they're like, oh, okay, we can they extend some grace to people who are very clearly have never been there. I think part of being obvious that you've never been there is you got to go see the chiropractor when you're done, because your head is just you're just looking all over at all the different things, so fascinated. I want to go there and sit in a totally different area and look at all the different things that were in the different
I
spots.
was just going to ask you about that. Not that I think that churches are like museums, but sometimes when they have so much effort and care put into the details and
Mhm.
having the icons and all of those things, I almost want to just sit and take some time and can I
Yeah.
just look at this?
Yeah, and a lot of them do before they do the friend who I talked to, he said if you come on a normal service, I think he said it starts at 10 a.m. But he's like, you're gonna walk in and you're gonna think you're late because there'll be people in there. But they do they have an hour and a half of time for prayer before the actual service starts. And a lot of it is sitting in there, um, maybe praying, maybe doing whatever you need to be doing, whatever they do. But also just being in that presence and experiencing that place. The whole
Yeah.
the whole building is set up to bring your nervous system into like an experience with God. And I think it's totally not uncommon to go and just sit and observe. When you join their church, we were talking to this young couple who's only been there a few months. And when you join the Orthodox Church, you have to go through a process called catechumen, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
Or you become a catechumen. Maybe the process isn't called catechumen. I'm not
Like
sure.
a catech human. I'm
I
just
don't
kidding.
know.
I don't think that's what it is. I'm
um,
just kidding.
but it's it's a, 8 to 12 month process where you are learning what it means to be an Orthodox Christian.
Oh, catechumen for catechism.
Okay. Yeah. So you go through that process. I'm really sorry if people are listening. They're like, I know about this, and I just sound so ignorant. I don't know about this. Um, but you go through that process, and one of the like modules in that process is you go around the building and you learn about all the icons and what they mean and what they represent and why they're there.
I would go
um,
through that process just to do that.
I think that part would be phenomenal.
I do
Um,
too.
I also think you could probably do that. They told us, like, if you're interested or have any questions, like, if you just email the priest, you can set up what's called like an inquiry call.
Mhm.
And they'll just like, they're happy to meet with you and answer any questions you have and discuss things. And like they're like that's like they're like if you're interested, you should do two things. One, just come to a few services for like a month or two and see, like, is this something I'm actually interested in, or is it just novel and like I don't actually want to participate? Because it's a big deal to them. Like if you like they don't if you become part of the church, they expect you to be part of the church.
Sure.
um and so like come for a little while and just see, set up a call with the priest and just ask questions and
I
like
wonder if
before
you would
you
do
ever
a
start
Zoom
any.
call or a podcast
I
to
actually
just
wondered
ask
that.
questions.
I wondered that too. There are several priests who have YouTube channels. One of them, I mean, it's a pretty significant channel, which is one of the ones I've been listening to. But
Mhm.
um like, yeah, there definitely are things. And I had the thought, I was like, I wonder if we could get one of them on the show, because there's a lot of like questions I would have. Uh, and I'm sure some of them are willing to do that. Um, in fact, this morning I watched an interview where a Protestant was interviewing an Orthodox priest and just like asking questions like, "Hey, why this, why that?" Um, and what's the difference between this belief and that belief. And um I think, I mean, and he approached it with the utmost honor. Like he was in no way trying to gotcha the guy. And I
I
was
don't
like,
know
I
why
think we
you
could
would
do
try to
that.
do that. I know, like, we've had a guest on before who, right before they came on, had a real gotcha interview. Do you remember this? And it just like makes me feel a little icky for
Mm,
the whole podcast community. Like,
yeah. Well, I know why some people do it. It drives content, and I think there is a desire to think you're right. Um, and if you are not an Orthodox Christian and you're talking to an Orthodox priest, they're very uh, they're very solid in what they believe.
I would hope so.
And yeah, and I think that like it would be easy not coming from that to have a lot of like hidden questions. Well, what about this and what about that? And probably bringing up the church's failures and points. Um, and so I get why people might do that. Um, but I know both of us, and I know that would never be our heart or intention. But
No, I'd just truly be curious, like, just curious to hear. I don't know. I guess the foundation
mm,
of belief and practice and
yeah,
outworking of faith. I don't actually think all of our faith is so different.
I mean, from
Like,
the
I just
things,
don't. I just think some of how it comes out is so different,
yeah,
and
from
it's
the things that I've watched, I would say there haven't been very many things that I'm like, oh, that's totally wrong or totally different. Let me use that term.
sure.
Um, there haven't been very many things like that. Um, and so, but also like, duh, it's like Christianity. Like there shouldn't be that many big differences. And I don't know why sometimes there is. Um, this particular Orthodox church that I went to was called an Antiochian, which is like the Church of Antioch in the Bible. It's the first place in the entire world where people are called Christians. Like this church can trace its roots back literally to the very beginning of Christianity. And that's like, that's very, there's something there. Like, I don't care what you believe, like, that is a powerful thing to be able to do that. Um, and I don't think it's definitely not something they take lightly. It's very important to them that that's part of their history. Um, and I think it's an important thing too. And so I wasn't surprised that there's not a lot of things. There are things um, that are different for sure. Like I mean, it was there was not a female up on the stage. I can tell you that. Like that's was a very thing. Um, but yeah, I don't. I've not really dug into it, so I don't know all of their core beliefs and what would differ. But yeah, it wasn't as different as I maybe thought it was.
Hmm. I'd also be curious to know. I would love to hear the difference between a Catholic priest and an Orthodox priest
Yeah,
because I know they're different,
they are
but
different.
from where my experience has been, they look very similar.
Yes, I think
You know,
the service probably feels fairly similar.
I love a Catholic service.
Yeah,
I like it when I can go with Catholic friends who are willing to explain things to me because I have a lot of questions like, oh,
yeah,
well, why did you kneel before you sat down? Like all of these things. Why are you looking over there and not over there?
yeah,
Why does everyone turn that way?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
again,
I
it's not a
definitely
dishonoring thing. I'm like, I want to know. Like, I'm
I,
very curious. What are the beliefs?
I was trying to follow along with the service because I wanted to be respectful, and but I like definitely did not know when I was supposed to make the sign of the cross and do all the things and turn which way. So I was just like, I'm just not gonna do that part because like they're all doing it at these certain times and I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm just not going to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I would be curious to know how they approach communion. Um, that's like my one, probably number one question.
Yeah.
I don't know that I actually believe there's a wrong way, as long as your heart is like accepting it as communion, like
Yeah.
participating in communion. But it's interesting to see how different it is, even in just Protestant churches. Like it
It's
is so
different
different.
in every service. Yeah.
Right.
My understanding would be like one of the big difference between a lot of Protestant churches and Catholic and Orthodox churches um, is do you believe the elements are literally the body and blood,
Right.
or do you believe that they
Are symbolic.
become that when it comes inside you, or do you just believe it's symbolic gesture? Um, and they are fully in the boat that it is literally you are consuming body and blood.
Very similar to the Catholics.
Very similar to the Catholics.
Do
Yes.
they
In fact,
also call it the
think
Eucharist?
yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that is like one of the biggest disagreements between Protestants and uh, Catholic
Orthodox.
Orthodox is the like how the communion is done.
Hmm. That's interesting. Did I tell you a couple weeks ago I spent some time at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City? Did I tell you this?
No.
It was magnificent. Like when you were talking about just so much to look at,
Yeah.
like there's been so much care put into statues and paintings and stained glass and the architecture. Um, and it was mind blowing. Like I could have spent hours in there.
Mm.
But I went and spent 5 or 10 minutes in, I guess it's the room of adoration, the room where they keep the Eucharist.
Hmm.
Um, and had a really sweet moment with the Lord there. And that was very cool to me.
Yeah.
But it was very touristy. There were hundreds of people in there just looking around, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you have to go through metal detectors. So like it was very much a thing. But I also had this experience. Like I went around probably like 5/6 of it. And then there was just a switch in the atmosphere, and the Lord was like, okay, it's time to go. So we skipped the rest and left.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? It was like real, it was very like very full of peace, um, reverent, I would say. Like
Yeah.
it was spectacular. But then there was a time to go, and then we had to go.
I do think that there is something to be said of the old churches that built beautiful buildings, because that's largely speaking different than um, like the churches I've grown up in. Not fully speaking, but like largely, like charismatic churches are fine with being in a strip center, or like
You should be more specific about that, Josh.
it's
Like a strip mall.
yes, like a strip mall, like a
Okay.
shopping center.
Okay.
Um, like yeah, I just think there is, and not that this is fully wrong either, but there's more of an emphasis on the person, not the building.
Oh, for sure.
Um, and I think in some ways we've uh, we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. Like
Mm.
we've abandoned this beautiful um, we've abandoned this beautiful piece of religion, um, to focus on something else, which is also not wrong. Like it's not wrong to focus on the person.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to say that either, but yeah, I just think yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic.
I know the more and more we go along, and the more and more I spend time with the Lord and learn about who he is,
Yeah.
the less I think different sects are wrong. You know, like I think there's absolute purpose and righteousness in the huge cathedrals that are ornate. And honestly, I believe the intent is to give honor to the Lord and to those who have come before us. And I don't think that is wrong. I think it is an honor thing. I think it can be turned into an idol, but I think the original intent is honor.
Mhm.
But I have mad respect for the people who they are a people group and they are the church regardless of where they go. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of a desert or if it is in a big, beautiful, ornate building. It doesn't matter. Still the church. So, like, there's a whole spectrum there, but I don't know. I don't think any of it's wrong, you know? And I love it all. Like, it's necessary. Yes, that is necessary. And yes, that is also necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all important pieces.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
know. I mean, think about the St. Patrick's Cathedral. When I was there, I saw thousands of people come through it.
Mm.
And I guarantee you, maybe a quarter or less were actual believers. But have you ever seen an attractional church who is in a strip mall have that kind of people just come in to be in the presence, like just walk in off the street to be there? And would they allow it? You know what I mean?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Again, I don't think it's wrong. I find it interesting because evangelism can come in a lot of different forms.
Very
And somebody
so.
could go sit in a church in a pew and look around at a lot of beautiful things that depict what has happened in the scriptures and be moved.
Mm-hmm.
And they can meet God there. I mean, they could do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would love if any of our listeners, like, do you know anything about Orthodoxy? Do you know an Orthodox priest who might want to come on our show and talk to us? Because we just genuinely have questions that we would love answers to. And we'd just love to have a conversation from a different perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Mm.
Well, I love that you went to that church. And I love that you went to the Passover meal too.
They were both amazing experiences. I highly recommend that everybody experience diversity in their faith as much as possible.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Market Mystics. If you are hungry for more, don't miss out on our exclusive bonus content available only to YouTube members. Demystify the world of cryptocurrency in the cryptosphere and explore everything from outrageous conspiracies to curious current events and out there spiritual musings. Nothing is off limits in Let's Get Weird. Become a channel member on YouTube to unlock these extra episodes. See you in the bonus episodes.